So if I was in a virtual world and trying to convey emotions to another person, then they would see everything. That's pretty cool.
Alright, good evening ladies and gents, welcome back to Compound Interesting. In today's video we're going to be going through Meta stock. Now this is the first time I've done a particular stock investment research video in a long time. I've been mostly focused on crypto, NFTs, etc, or just the markets in general, but Meta is starting to become such an attractive opportunity that I had to dive in. And the fact that I'm very researched in the metaverse space because of a lot of money invested in the other side metaverse, which is Yuga Labs, Bored Ape Yacht Club kind of metaverse, that I'm trying to keep on top of the competitors. So I did a deep dive into Meta stock. I used to be I used to be an investor in Meta. It was my second largest stock holding position after Tesla, but after like I saw the decline in Facebook's growth, in their users, etc, on Instagram, people not really using Instagram so much, I sold all of my shares for Tesla a while ago. But at these valuations and the massive opportunity that the metaverse is, in my opinion, the huge opportunity that it is, it's starting to become a little bit more attractive to me. So I've done a lot of research. So I've done a bit of research on Meta, and yeah, this is everything I know in today's video. So right now, what you're buying if you're investing into Meta is a company that is, the growth is slowing, but an insanely cheap valuation for a company that is making massive profits every single year. So you have a company that's making massive profits, the growth is starting to decline, or the growth is starting to stall out. However, on top of this company that you're buying, you have a division within that company which is spending aggressively, like insane amounts of money they're spending on a potential huge growth opportunity. So they're making loads of profits, but this growth opportunity is basically spending all those profits on something that we have no idea, well, we don't really have much of an idea how well it's doing, or we won't see if it's actually a product people want in the future until it's actually made, if you know what I mean. So it's basically, the stock market hates the unknown. So if Facebook just kept reinvesting in their suite of apps, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, Reels, all that, if they just kept continually trying to grow those out, Wall Street and investors would love that. But the fact that there's this unknown thing that they're putting just insane amounts of money into, that no one can tell if there's no users obviously, and no one can tell if this is going to be a hit or not. Investors hate the unknown, and that's the main reason the stock has absolutely plummeted, in my opinion. Alright, so I'm going to quickly run through their Q3 earnings results and pretty much their disastrous earnings results. We'll also go through the positives of Meta, and finally like the huge opportunity that the metaverse presents. So firstly their net income was down 52% year over year, which is awful for a company of that size to lose income of 52%. That's an insane drop in income. Their revenue is down 4% year over year, but it's actually up 2% year over year if you're accounting for the massive strength of the dollar. So basically, because they make a lot of their revenue outside of the US and all those currencies have gone down the shitter, the results in US dollar terms looks a lot worse than it is. So that's happening for pretty much any sort of international company. So yeah, their growth is slowing, if not declining, which is really bad. But 50% drop in net income, that's insanely bad. So as I mentioned, they're spending an insane amount of money on their research and development of the metaverse and growing out this opportunity, and they reiterated that they're going to increase spending in this division over next year and well into the future. So if we extrapolate out, this was a chart made by Chamath Palihapitiya, if we extrapolate out what you might imagine that they could spend over the next decade on this metaverse, this you kind of come, like, I think last year they spent $15 billion on the metaverse, and they said they're going to spend significantly more next year and keep that much spending for the next decade. So that would equate to, let's say, $250 billion. So you can equate this to similar multi-year massive spending programs for huge results. And you can see, like, to create the Apple iPhone, there was only $3.6 billion spent to create the Apple iPhone before it actually kind of took off. The Manhattan Project, atomic bomb, Tesla only spent $25 billion before they actually became free cash flow positive. Boeing, Google, and the only one that's actually somewhat in this similar range, this is inflation adjusted as well, the only one that's in a similar range is the Apollo program. That's the only one that has such a massive impact on the world and was so hard. That's the only one that had a similar amount of spending over 13 years, and Facebook want to spend this over 10 years, $250 billion to grow out the metaverse. So this is kind of unprecedented spending. No one's ever spent this much. No company's ever spent this much on one opportunity. And yeah, so you can see why some investors are worried, because this is a huge bet. And the only way you could actually do a bet like this, like the only kind of people who could really do a bet like this are like the likes of Elon Musk or, Steve Jobs, like these kind of founder CEOs, the guys who have stuck around in their business for decades and see, okay, the Facebook, Instagram, they're kind of maybe reaching their peak, they're reaching their plateau. We have to pivot. I'm a founder CEO. I'm not finished being a CEO. I'm going to pivot and really swing for the fences. And I think the metaverse is a $1 trillion opportunity. And Zuckerberg also sees that. So it's good that the CEO has stuck around and wants to do something different, because the likes of Tim Cook, the current Apple CEO, would never take on this much risk. He's just going to continually milk the iPhone for the next 10 years until eventually something takes its place. Perhaps that's the Oculus that Facebook has, who knows. But yeah, he's just going to keep milking the iPhone, like nothing really revolutionary, just buy back stock and Apple will just do well over time until it doesn't. Mark Zuckerberg is starting to pivot before people realize that Facebook and Instagram aren't really going to be used in the future. So let's run through a couple of reasons why Facebook is struggling right now, why their revenue and their earnings are dropping. So first of all, they're comparing to a pretty insane year last year, like 2020 and 2021. Like that was a really boom time for advertisers, for spending, etc., etc. Advertisers were willing to spend crazy amounts on Facebook, on Instagram, and yeah, now they're comparing to those numbers from last year. And yeah, we're going into recession. Obviously, advertising is one of the first things that gets hit. Like companies want to scale back their spending. Kind of advertising is one of the first things that they scale back. The other thing that's probably weighing big on Facebook, Instagram, etc., is Apple's new privacy settings. So you can disable the tracking, and that's taking a really big hit on Facebook's earnings or their revenue, like hundreds of billions of dollars probably in potential revenue lost, because it's harder for advertisers to be profitable with this new privacy setting from Apple. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing that there's not that much. They're not so, deep into what we're doing at every single second. And I think it's also quite obvious that people are not using, especially in the first world, like all their growth is coming kind of from the third world. But people in the first world are not joining Facebook and Instagram as much as they used to. And they're also, a lot of them are leaving the platforms, and the actual time spent on the platforms, from what my personal experience, because Facebook don't share these numbers, but the time spent on the platforms personally and from people I know has plummeted. So people spend way less time on the platforms. They might check it every now and then, but they're not scrolling it all day like they used to, because they realize it's a waste of time. Alright, so now let's run through some of the positives about Meta, and Meta's valuation is probably the first thing. Meta is now valued at 1/10 the size of Apple. It's down 75%, so that's obviously, just to get back to all-time high, that would be a 4x from here. So yeah, Facebook being 1/10 the size of Apple now, that's crazy. But now everyone is shitting on them and laughing at them. There's all these videos about how the metaverse is stupid and it's a scam and no one's going to use it. And yeah, from my experience, every time someone is laughing at you, every time someone is laughing at a technology, that's usually sometimes a good counter indicator. Their Reels is doing really well. Instagram Reels is doing really well. They haven't really monetized that yet. Like, they're just trying to grow out the Reels as much as possible, getting people addicted to Reels like the way they're addicted to TikTok. Obviously, TikTok is one of the biggest hurdles for Instagram right now, but they're trying to get people hooked on Reels. So they're not really pushing the advertising on Reels too much. They just want people to get used to going on Reels, and it's growing really, really well. Reels is. And once they turn on the monetization for Reels to the max, and people start realizing, oh, I can make really good money doing advertising on Reels. And if you don't know what Reels is, it's basically like It's basically like TikTok within Instagram. It's just those short form videos. And on top of Reels, they still own WhatsApp and they still own Messenger, which they haven't turned on any monetization for yet, which is kind of crazy. They still have two of the biggest apps of all time, two of the apps with the most users. So yeah, they're basically like maybe 4 out of 5 of the most used apps in the world are owned by Meta, which is like crazy when you think about it. And yeah, people are trading this stock like it's a value stock. Its price to earnings ratio is like 10 at the moment. So even if the earnings dropped by another 50% next year, then you'd have a PE ratio of 20. That would be a fair valuation probably, but yeah, a PE ratio of 10, like that's very, very low. So now we'll talk about the metaverse, my thoughts on their metaverse, and me myself, I was laughing at it a month or two ago, but it's their progress on Oculus, on their VR and AR has been very impressive.
Okay, so this might be kind of a hot take, but the Meta Quest Pro, this headset, is $1,500, and I'll explain the thinking behind that in a second, but it is actually pretty good.
I'll show you some videos of like what they've been able to accomplish with their spending so far. And yeah, some of the things are pretty amazing. So like it'll actually track your face and be able to pick up on the micro expressions and the hand gestures that I'm doing right now. So if you're actually interacting with someone on the in the metaverse, like there will be a lot more, it'll be a lot more realistic. So you'll actually feel like you're there with them. And I think that's really impressive.
The eye movements, it's kind of a lot of the little things too, like the little muscles on your face that move when you talk and you make little micro expressions. So if I was in a virtual world and trying to convey emotions to another person, then they would see everything. That's pretty cool.
And is a good sign of progress. The other thing is, like, I'm invested in the other side, Yuga Labs metaverse, but Yuga Labs only has a customer base of 10,000 or maybe like maximum like 100,000 people that they can like advertise, or not advertise, but kind of push their metaverse on, whereas Facebook has a customer base or a user base of billions of people who they can like kind of say, oh, you're on Instagram right now, do you want to go into the metaverse right now and talk to this person through the metaverse, or run around and play this game in the metaverse, etc., etc. So they have this massive user base that will be very easy to shift them, like start shifting them from using their suite of apps. Like they'll still use those apps, but they'll also start shifting towards using kind of metaverse projects or metaverse apps or metaverse meetings, etc., etc. And people think like, oh, no one's using these Oculus headsets, but when you actually look at the data, like the Oculus is sold 8 million headsets last year, and that's more than Xbox. They sold more headsets last year than Xbox has sold Xboxes. And they're not quite at the level of PlayStation or Nintendo, but yeah, you can see the growth in Oculus is enormous. So like I mentioned, investors don't like the unknown, and it's a lot of unknowns here with Meta because the progress on the metaverse is not very easy to see. But if you dig a little bit deeper, you can see that they are making progress. And if there's any company, like if there's any company that has the highest chance of having a successful metaverse platform, it's going to be Facebook. With the amount of money they're putting into it, like I'd say they have a 90+% of actually being one of the main metaverses. And investors are selling because they think the cash burn is too high. Obviously the cash burn is insane, but they're fleeing the stock. They're seeing a slight dip in growth in the original suite of apps, and they don't really get the metaverse opportunity whatsoever, when it's pretty obvious this is $1 trillion, if not like $10 trillion opportunity over the next decade or two. They don't know, they don't understand it. Wall Street doesn't care about it. They think it's stupid, and they think it's way too risky. Now, because of this, I think it will take a few years for those investors to leave the Meta stock and for a new suite of investors to jump into Meta stock. So I think Meta will be at cheap valuations for a few years, and then once it starts to become more obvious that the metaverse is actually going to be a thing, then Meta will start doing well again, and will get back to all-time highs, and will get way above all-time highs if they're successful in creating this new metaverse. So there's 3 main reasons why I've started to nibble at some small shares in Meta. So just to summarize, I want to first hedge against my bet on the other side, because I think Facebook has the best opportunity. I have to be honest there, like Facebook is spending the most money, has the most capital to do so, and probably has the best chance of doing something successful. Number two, Meta is probably insanely undervalued right now. They have some really popular apps, like the top most popular apps of all time. They still own those, and people are just completely throwing that away because they've reached like the plateau of pretty much having every single person on the planet within their user base. So people are like, okay, there's no more to grow. But the way I see it is they'll be able to transition these users from their suite of apps, so Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, like those people are still going to use those apps. So they're basically going to transition these users from using Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger. They're still going to use those apps, but they're going to transition them slowly into Metaverse stuff. So these people aren't using these apps as often. They're not spending as much time on those apps. But as they transition into the Metaverse, they will be spending a lot more time in the Metaverse, especially, younger people. They'll be using the Metaverse a lot more, spending a lot more time within the Metaverse. And there's plenty of opportunity there for Meta to capitalize on these people using the Metaverse or being in the Metaverse. And finally, the Metaverse is an unfathomably large opportunity. People are going to spend a lot of time in the Metaverse, whatever that ends up being in the future, and Facebook has the best opportunity to have the biggest one. Alright, so that's everything. That's a quick synopsis of everything I know on Facebook, on Meta right now. I have started nibbling a couple of shares. No rush to buy so many shares. I don't think Meta will remain cheap for a while. So that's how I'm playing it. Maybe I'll just keep on top of Meta, maybe buy a few more shares over the next year or two. And if you did enjoy the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could smash the thumbs up button. If you're new, make sure you hit the notification bell, because I'm a very small channel. And if you actually want to see my videos, make sure you hit the notification bell. Thank you so much for watching. Can't wait to see you in the next one. Cheers.